See if we can game you up and bring you up to par on like who the real black dudes was that, you know, really put it down for the black motorcycle set. We're gonna take you into the world of Sugar Bear. I've dealt with Sugar Bear on different occasions. Gave me some of the motorcycle technology that I got today under my belt. We're really gonna go right here into Sugar Bear's world, and he's gonna game you up on who was the first go-to guys, you know, the Black Harley-Davidson set, and the guys that didn't get their credit for, you know, what motorcycles they contributed to, like the Easy Rider movie or whatnot. Right now, we're just gonna like roll some footage and see if we can game you up and bring you up to par on like who the real black dudes was that, you know, really put it down for the black motorcycle set.
What we were doing goes well into the early 50s and before. And I'm amused sometimes when I go places and I hear people saying, well, we've been able to trace the history of choppers back to the early 60s. And I've got people on my wall that were riding in the 50s choppers.
Sugar Bear has been building choppers longer than I've been alive.
I was driving down the freeway and this guy passed me on a chopper. And he had apes, and he was kind of laid back. His girl, old lady, whatever you want to call her, was on the back of the bike leaning up against a sissy bar, reading a paperback. And I just thought that was awesome. And I looked at that, and she flashed the peace sign at me. And I smiled, she smiled, and I think the next week I bought a bike. My shop was in South Central. I was living in South Central LA. I opened up a shop around the corner from my house so that I could walk to work.
Sugar Bear and other African-American bike builders were isolated from the industry, never receiving the recognition they deserved.
Tom McMullen was the owner and publisher of Street Chopper, and he would come down into the area and he got to know us, and so he started taking pictures of them and putting them in the magazine. I was on the cover of Street Chopper in '72, and I think that's the only time a black guy has been on the cover.
There wasn't any black riders. A lot of Mexican guys. They weren't into choppers at that time. But I'm supposing there were a lot of people that were very prejudiced. Of the people that we rode with, there was probably a lot of prejudiced people. Iron crosses on their bike and swastikas and just everything. Everything that was German was like cool. As to what the reason or where it came from, you might get a better answer from someone who's more prejudiced.
I don't think that the people that were wearing it really knew what it stood for. You know, I think it was just that they wanted to be in your face.
If you went somewhere, you were either told or you got the feeling that you weren't wanted. My uncle went to Daytona, and he stopped by the side of the road to check his bike, and he heard this popping noise. He thought it was a car backfiring. And when he stood up, his foot was warm. He looked down, he'd been shot in the foot by a passing car. So when things like that happen to you, you tend not to go places like that. I've been to Daytona once. I went in 2004 for the first time. Everybody takes their own viewpoints towards things. And there are a lot of people who will not tell you that there was prejudice because that would mean that they recognized it and they did nothing about it. So, and these people probably don't want to be associated with that at this time. This is America. We had to have a civil rights movement. So when you can't be too amazed about this because it was happening through our society all the time anyway.
In the bike magazines, like any other publication, they tend to feature whatever identifies with the readership. And the predominant readership is white.
Easy Rider at the time had white power ads, swastikas, SS insignias in the ads in the magazine, and that was their clientele at that time. They did say that they had wanted to put my bikes in there, but they didn't want to put a picture of me in there because they weren't sure how it would be handled at that time. Because, again, that was their clientele. It was a business decision, they said. So I told them, well, if you can't put my picture in, then you can't put my bikes in. I looked at Easy Rider to see what they called motorcycles. And for me, it's kind of funny because a lot of the stuff that I see is old stuff, renewed, that we were doing in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s. That's brand new stuff to a lot of people now because they don't know their history.
African American riders took their media exposure into their own hands by starting magazines like Soul Spokes and Soulful Wheels, but they couldn't get nationwide distribution.
I mean, you know, you had guys in there with big afros and it was all black, so I doubt very seriously that very many whites saw the magazine.
The audience should have been there for them because, you know, like I said, there's a few bike builders that built some stuff that were just awesome. And it wasn't a color barrier thing. We were all just guys riding motorcycles together.
You know, I believe there's a couple of magazines out there right now that are published by Colorfullas, but because it doesn't come up, I couldn't even name them.
It wasn't until the late 1990s that Easy Riders decided to put Sugar Bear in their magazine, and since then, he can't keep up with the demand for his radical front ends.
They've made a full circle. The industry has changed. I guess I was fortunate enough to ride it out.
We're going to take you to the world of Benny Hardin, one of the first go-to black guys that contributed motorcycles to the black motorcycle set and to Hollywood as far as Easy Rider, the movie. I've heard a lot of my elders talk about Benny Hardin, and I thought it would be kind of special. You know, you could get some of this knowledge or whatnot as far as who were the first black, you know, mechanics and guys that contributed their time to the motorcycle community. I've heard Heavy from up north speak on Benny Hardin. I've heard Frank Kemp speak on Benny Hardin. I've heard Pee Wee speak on him. I've heard a lot of my elders speak on Benny Hardin, and we're going to take you into this right here and let you see who Benny Hardin was.
There's a guy named Benny Hardy, who we called the king of bikes. Benny was a guy that everybody patterned themselves after. If you didn't know something about a bike, even if you had a shop, you'd call Benny. And Benny was a guy that most people don't know about, but he built the two most famous bikes in the history of motorcycling, I think, the Easy Rider bikes for the movie.
In 1968, production started on the motion picture Easy Rider, and director Dennis Hopper was in search of someone to make the perfect choppers.
Harley Davidson wouldn't give us any, we asked for bikes to be comped, and they wouldn't comp us any bikes at all. As a matter of fact, they didn't want their image to be an outlaw image. So we had to get some old police bikes and chop them up.
About 99% of the people that ride motorcycles have no idea who built the bikes, who really built the bikes.
I think it was more Hollywood's idea of what the bikes would look like for everyday riders.
It was hard during that time for a black guy. You just didn't get credit for what you did.
Ben Hardy worked behind the scenes building the choppers, but Cliff Voss coordinated the effort.